Economics is the study of the use of resources to produce and distribute goods and services. While not all of the world's problems are economic in nature, many of them have an economic component or dimension. Today, economics is at the core of survival itself, for it would be impossible for all the world's people to revert back to a natural state and live independently from our machine-driven system of economic production distribution. So what are the principles that are at the core of economic systems? In this program, we will look at the most important basic economic concepts. Economics is based on scarcity, the kind of scarcity that wintering animals are faced with in their search for food enough to survive. Scarcity is not an all-or-nothing affair. It can be a function of time. For instance, grass, abundant in summer, scarce in the winter. Scarcity can also be a function of geography. This bull elk has a whole valley to himself, so he does not need to compete with any other animals for food. In the arena of human economics, societal and individual values can play a dominant role in creating haves and have-nots. Let's look at how this works by examining one of the world's most important natural resources: oil. Oil is a critical component to the functioning of Western economies. One of the first things to notice about crude oil reserves is that their distribution is not uniform across the planet. There is very little oil in Western Europe and Japan. So geographic disparity creates scarcity in some areas. Haves and have-nots. But having crude oil is not enough. After it is extracted from the ground, the oil must undergo a highly technological refining process to result in a product such as gasoline. So crude oil may be abundant in a geographical region, but low or zero productivity in processing it can result in scarcity. When scarcity exists, rarely is the scarce commodity distributed equally among all peoples. Most oil, for example, is consumed by only a handful of Western and Eastern industrial nations, nations that can pay for it. Scarcity of resources, or even the threat of it, can have dire consequences. In 1990, when Iraq invaded oil-rich Kuwait, threatening to create a shortage in the supply of oil, the Gulf War began. Many people died, and an environmental disaster ensued. Shortages, or scarcity, can bring about all manner of human misery and suffering. One of the most appalling situations unfolded in colonial America, where land resources were abundant, but laborers to work the land were in short supply. Initially, the first American settlers recruited poor European workers into indentured servitude to fill the labor shortage. Later, when that solution proved inadequate, black Africans were captured and forced into slavery. Controversy over slavery resulted in a bloody civil war with many deaths, and its repercussions are felt in the United States to this day.
Ready, fire!
With scarcity at the basis of material economics, the key operating principle is opportunity cost. The principle of opportunity cost states that if you have more of one thing, you must have less of another. In the case of true abundance, opportunity cost diminishes or ceases to exist, and you can have it all. Let's look at how the principle of opportunity cost works on a variety of levels. Over the planet Earth, there is much land. But what to do with it? If we use it for a city, we cannot farm it. In the city, if we build skyscrapers, we exclude residential neighborhoods. On a global scale, there is great debate over the preservation of the world's rainforests. Should they be saved for wildlife, recreation, and the health of the planet? Or should they be cleared for agriculture and other human industrial purposes? These are choices that must be made. Land is finite. Forests are limited. And many of the Earth's resources can be used up. All of these facts must be considered when we make choices. Choices which, once made, prevent other possible choices from being fulfilled. Again, the principle of opportunity cost at work. Opportunity cost functions at all levels of business. If a company needs to distribute videotapes to customers, it can decide to invest in tape duplication machines and commit labor hours to the process. Alternately, it can take the work to another company, which specializes in tape duplication, and pay them to do the work. In the latter case, the company uses up more of its capital money resources, but less its labor resources. At the consumer level, when faced with limited income, we cannot buy everything. If we decide to buy toys, we cannot have a telescope, or new shoes, or jewelry. Again, opportunity cost. Even how a person chooses to spend his or her time relates to opportunity cost. When we watch television, it is often exclusive of other activities, such as outdoor recreation. Such a choice, while not directly economic, has economic consequences. Our decision to purchase a television rather than sporting goods impacts both of those industries and the people in them. So, based on scarcity, we have seen that economics is concerned primarily with a subset of opportunity cost decisions, those that deal with the use of resources to produce and distribute goods and services. And those goods and services of the Western industrial economies are truly remarkable in their number, quality, and variety. How did such a plethora of choices evolve? Western economies can trace their histories back to the kings and queens of Europe. These monarchs ran centrally controlled economies, and their subjects were a kind of slave labor. However, in the 1770s, particularly in places like Britain and the new country of America, a new system of economic functioning was emerging called the free market economy. Most economists believe the free market economy triggered the Industrial Revolution, the use of machines to produce goods. The mechanization of economic processes, particularly in agriculture, transformed the world. Through much of the 20th century, the free market economy philosophy vied for world dominance with a new form of command economy called communism, anchored in Russia and China. In a planned, centrally controlled communist economy, the government controls all economic decisions. It determines what goods and services are produced, who receive training or education, what kind of employment each citizen has, and who buys the goods and services. It even sets actual wages and prices. This effort to control the thousands and sometimes millions of decisions which constitute the economic activity of a country proved too complex and overwhelming to be entirely effective in all areas. For this and many other reasons, by the end of the 20th century, the communist approach appears to have failed. So let's look at some of the major properties of today's free market economy and how they came to be. 200 years ago, most people possessed the necessary skills for survival. Most work was done by hand with only simple tools. Men were hunters, farmers, and woodworkers. Women were cooks, weavers, and caretakers of children and animals. But over time, as populations increased, labor became specialized. A division of labor took place. Today, we have bakers who make our bread, veterinarians who care for animals,
Well, the baby's heart rate real good,
and carpenters who build our furniture. A few people raise food for the rest of us, and both men and women are able to have almost any job they choose. However, the cornerstone of the Industrial Revolution was the invention of the production line and its use of machines to produce goods and supply services. One worker no longer produced a single product, but specialized in creating or putting together just one component of that product. In the creation of a larger item, such as a bus, we find hundreds of individuals contributing their specific job skills toward the completion of the end product. From the cutters and welders who erect the frame of the bus, to the assemblers who put together the electronic components, to the people who install the seats. The production line, through the use of machines, allows a large number of products to be built simultaneously at a high rate of speed. Division of labor could never work unless there was an acceptable medium of exchange. The welder of buses would have a hard time bartering his skill for bread from the baker. What is needed to make division of labor work is money, a medium of exchange accepted by everyone, light in weight and not easily counterfeited. Most countries have central banks to make sure there is enough money in circulation to handle the vast number of transactions in the marketplace. In the United States, this central bank is called the Federal Reserve and is located in Washington, D.C. Free market economy has also evolved a strong system of local banks, which store money, loan money, and provide their financial services like checking accounts and credit cards, all of which help free market transactions flow easily. The primary entity or institution of the free market economy is the corporation. The corporation is a legal entity which has as its goal the production of specific goods and services to make a profit. It is a major user of resources and labor. Here are some corporations you may be familiar with. Starting a corporation is a rather simple matter. Corporate attorney David Walder explains how it's done.
First, we must decide whether it's a for-profit or a non-profit corporation. Then we need to draft the articles of incorporation, where we need to include the important information for the basic structure of the corporation, such as the name of the corporation, the number of shares that the corporation is authorized to issue, the names of the initial members of the board of directors, as well as the name of the registered agent and the registered office. At that point, you file the articles along with the appropriate filing fee with the appropriate Secretary of State for the state of incorporation. After that, there would be an initial board of directors meeting where the directors would meet and adopt bylaws and decide how many shares to issue and to whom, usually for consideration. And the shares usually would be common shares, They would be, though the corporation could have additional option to issue restricted or any other types of shares that would assist the corporation in its goals.
Well, we've got several engineering functions.
For the day-to-day running of a corporation, there are officers who govern the company. The principal one is the president. There are also vice presidents, treasurers, and secretaries. Here is a bank president and the president of the bus plant we saw earlier. We have seen that the ownership of corporations was determined by the ownership of the stock. There are two major kinds of stocks issued by corporations: private and public. Public stocks are traded freely in an open market called the stock exchange. The most famous of these is the New York Stock Exchange. With public stocks, anybody, if they have the money to invest, can become one of the owners of companies like IBM, United Airlines, or Intel. The stock market is perhaps the epitome of the free market, where transactions take place exclusively for the purpose of making money. So far, we've seen some of the primary features of the free market economy: the corporation as the major institution, the establishment of an acceptable medium of exchange, a high degree of labor division, and the intensive use of machines in producing goods and services. Finally, we actually need a marketplace, arenas where goods and services can be exchanged. We've already seen the stock market, but an open-air market like this one, found the world over, is often what people think of when imagining an economic market. Here, many goods are brought together, sold and traded, with prices determined largely by the factors of supply and demand. One of the factors integral to the success of the flea market is the ability of the sellers to get their wares to the marketplace. This is a rudimentary distribution system that links the producer of the goods to the consumer. Malls, department stores, and mail-order catalogs are all part of an elaborate distribution system. To get a product from its point of manufacture to the point of sale, there is a large transportation network. Trucks logging millions of miles, trains constantly moving, railroad cars filled with products, ships sailing the planet's waters. Even airplanes moving packages of every size form this complex network of activity that day and night moves products across the country and the globe. It's into this sophisticated marketplace that a corporation must come into existence and compete in order to survive. Corporations are like people. They are born, grow, live, and die. At one time, there were many businesses associated with horse-drawn vehicles, makers of wagons, wheels, and harnesses. Now, due to changing market demand, have all but disappeared. Given a well-functioning free market, once a corporation is created and its purpose defined, its fate in general will depend on two factors: consumer or market acceptance of the good or service, profitability in combining the factors of production to produce good or service. For the first factor, let's look at a case history. Personal computers are now an accepted fixture in most businesses and many homes. However, there was a time when their future was not so bright. In the 1970s and early 80s, computers were large mainframe machines housed in large computer rooms. Their primary use was for research in the fields of science and engineering. They helped build the atom bomb, and put men in space. Computers were also used in modern military forces and were instrumental devices for storing and retrieving huge amounts of data for businesses like banks and insurance companies. But why in the world would anyone want a smaller version of a machine like this in their office? Well, in the 60s and 70s, people were using typewriters and doing business calculations by hand with pencils and adding machines. That changed when small personal computers were developed that could run software programs that performed word processing, replacing the typewriter, and do spreadsheets, the backbone of accounting procedures necessary for every business. The PC replaced the pencil and hand calculator as well. These applications create market acceptance of the personal computer almost overnight. Now there is every kind of software imaginable that can be run on a personal computer. A second application drove the market expansion into its next phase, using the computer to produce graphics. Desktop publishing replaced the old manual cut and paste method. Now anyone could produce professional-looking marketing pieces, documents, even publications. At the same time that practical applications were driving market acceptance, using computers was getting easier. Instead of having to use complex languages for operating the computer, a simple symbolic interface was developed. Now, operating a computer was far less complicated, and therefore possible for a much greater number of people. Finally, what once cost $100,000 is now less than $2,000. The ability to profitably manufacture desktop computers has caused prices to fall steadily for the consumer, making them an affordable addition to many homes and businesses. Of course, computers and their software have been heavily advertised, fueling the ever-expanding sales market. We have seen that satisfying consumer needs in three areas has driven the market expansion of personal computing. Significant applications such as word processing, spreadsheets, and graphics fulfilled a real need. User-friendliness through graphic and symbolic interfaces was, in a way, like making clothes stylish rather than purely functional. Finally, lowering production costs resulted in lower prices for the consumer, making computers widely affordable. This brings us to the second component of corporate success: profitability in combining the factors of production. Factors of production are natural resources, considered to be gifts of nature; labor, that is, the workers; capital, such as money, buildings and tools, and other parts which are purchased from outside suppliers. Let's compare two corporations which produce the same product, baked goods. Both successfully combine the factors of production in different ways. Rudy's is a large bakery. It is capital intensive. It uses large machines to produce its baked goods. Much of its labor is used to monitor the operation of the production lines. It uses very little true material resources, only water. Its raw materials are processed grains like wheat flour, which it buys from other companies. Daily Bread also gets its raw material, flour, from mills that process grains. However, it intensively uses labor to mix and prepare the baked goods. Both companies bake their products in an oven, Daily Bread on a small scale, and Rudy's on a larger. Both companies profitably produce excellent baked goods. So we have seen that economics looks at how resources are used to produce goods and services to satisfy human wants and needs. That the methods for doing this have changed over time, from the labor-intensive, simple tool economies to the machine-based large corporations of today. So far, economics has been based on scarcity and the principle of opportunity cost. But perhaps someday, a condition of true material abundance can exist for all. Number 1. One requirement for an acceptable medium of exchange is A. Accepted by everyone. B. Backed by a reserve of gold or silver. C. Not easily destroyed. D. Made of gold or silver. Number 2. Both of these businesses are examples of A. Economic systems. B. Marketplaces. C. Factors of production. D. Capital. Number 3. Construction of this home utilizes which factors of production? A. Natural resources and labor. B. Capital. C. Other parts. D. All of the above. Number 4. This business is a corporation, which means that A. It does business of over $1 million each year. B. It makes a profit. C. It has completed legal paperwork. D. Its stock is publicly traded. Number 5. According to the video, the fate of a corporation depends on A. Market acceptance of its good or service. B. Whether it can sell a large number of stocks. C. Profitability in combining the factors of production. D. A and C.